Good morning. Good morning, people. Thank you for joining us. We got people streaming in here.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well this morning.
We are excited to share a little bit about CMMC this morning. Hopefully provide some good educational points if you are not super familiar. None of us are super familiar because it hasn't come out yet, but we'll share a little bit about what we know about CMMC. It's just definitely a journey, and then what we're doing to help our clients get prepared for CMMC. So I would love if you would put in the chat where you're joining from. It's always nice to see where people are coming from all around the country or the world. And so we have definitely an action-packed day today. Got plenty of content to get through. I'm joined today by Brian Anderson, good friend and team member for 20 years. And Kelsey is waiting in the wings. He is my good friend and business partner for 25 years. And he'll be answering perhaps some of the more challenging questions as they come up near the end. But my name is Paul Van Meter. I'm one of the founders of ProShop ERP, and it's an honor to have you guys all here today. So let's dig in. Brian, you want to go through some of the housekeeping first?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, so we, as Paul mentioned, the chat, if you guys want to throw in, just where you're coming from, just a general hi to everybody, that'd be great. I see we've got people from all over the country, even real close to us in Arlington and Vancouver there. So hi, everyone, welcome. And in terms of getting some questions out there, oftentimes there'll be questions as we go along. What we'll do is we're going to ask you to go ahead and put those in the Q&A section. So if you have a question, post them there. We may be getting to those just as sort of a fact through. Otherwise, we'll try to have some Q&A time left over at the end, or maybe even reach out to you afterward to kind of answer those questions directly, depending on what we can get through today. As Paul mentioned, we have a lot to get through. So let's get to it. If you have any issues, let me know, and I'll be happy to help out.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, we have people from all over the place, friends and people who are not friends yet, from Seattle and Ohio and Connecticut and Poulsbo and Indiana and Ontario and Michigan and Sioux City, Iowa, and Texas, Fort Worth, Santa Ana. All right, awesome. All right, well, let's go ahead and dig in here. So CMM is coming. Some would say it might be here, but just at the beginning stages. Essentially, if your company works in the industrial defense base, or the DIB, the defense industrial base, or DIB, and you have controlled unclassified information, or CUI, there's a lot of acronyms, and you want to continue doing that kind of work, you will need to get CMMC certified at one level or another. So let's dig in and learn a little bit more here. So we're going to start by just giving a little bit of the history of ProShop, kind of why we're in this space in the first place. Then we're going to talk a little bit more about what CMMC is, some of the features that we're building to help our customers be compliant. We're going to share for the first time what we call our CMMC Flying Start package to help customers go through this, and then we'll do some wrap up and Q&A at the end. So let's start with the history here. So why are we even in this business in the first place? It's a funny and circuitous story, but my partners and I all went to college together, and we started a machine shop right out of college. We worked on Formula SE race cars, designing and machining parts, fell in love with it, really enjoyed working together as a team. And so we decided to start a machine shop. My business partner took out a second mortgage on his house, and that was enough money to fill up this little space with a couple of machines and start knocking on doors. So as we started our business, we started trying to organize all of our data using Excel, and Kelsey was good with Visual Basic, so he made some fancy macros, but ultimately that was not going to scale with us. So we started outgrowing what Excel could do for us. Just 3 years in, we had about a dozen employees, and we started looking for other software products to help us organize the shop. And we just couldn't find anything. We got demos of lots of products, and when we asked them, all right, show us how it's going to help us out on the shop floor, because we were really focused on execution. We had built things into our spreadsheets like cutting tool management and fixture management, and our in-process inspections and first article reports and our work instructions. None of them could do those things. So Being somewhat dismayed by that, we decided to just hire a software developer ourselves and just build something strictly for ourselves. No intentions of ever selling it to anyone else. So we just kind of grew over the years, kept building more and more features, built a whole bunch of QMS modules in it. When we got ISO and AS certified, we got ITAR registered at one point. So we built a bunch of ITAR features in it. And just moving along, growing the company until one day, our biggest machine shop customer approached us and asked us if we would sell ProShop to them. One of their employees had moonlighted for us on the weekends and had gone back to the owners of their company and told them about what ProShop was. We didn't say yes at first, but eventually we agreed to it. And ultimately that led to us selling the business. So we sold our machine shop in 2014. We had about 75 employees at the time, about 25 machines, and decided to move off and go into the software business. So the last 5 years or so, we opened up ProShop in 2016. We've had a really fun time getting to know a lot of shops out there and helping them go paperless. And many of our customers started asking us, hey, about CMMC, and we started hearing things about it and reading about it. And we said, you know what, we need to learn a lot more about this and be ahead of this. So that's what we're trying to do here. So what is the CMMC? And I'm not going to read all of this text. We will share these slides at the end. So don't worry about jotting down every single little note. And we'll have a few other resources that we can share as well. In fact, Emily is already sharing some of the resources that we have right now with links and other things that you can learn more with. So basically, the CMMC is a measure of a business's readiness in the cybersecurity arena. And it's built on the framework of a whole bunch of other standards, ISO and NIST and DFARS. But essentially, it requires now a third-party auditing to a certain level, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to continue to receive contracts to work on government-related projects. Why is it important for your business? It's important for two main reasons. Probably the most important is it helps keep your business safe. As many of you probably know, hacking and bad actors and malware have never been more active and more present. So it really is important to have a lot of these measures in place just to keep your company safe. But the other big reason is that the government will start flowing down soon. And in fact, I think it already has to some very select few contracts, the requirements to be compliant to the CMMC standard and ultimately certified. So if you want to keep working on those contracts, you will need to get certified at some point. I thought we'd highlight just for a moment here an example. We had a client, about a 65-person company, I believe. They're in the aerospace and defense business. They were already well on their path to the NIST 800-171 standard, practicing relatively good cyber hygiene. They were on-prem with us, doing local backups, although apparently their backup system wasn't working very well. That wasn't checked. And one of their employees clicked on an email that had a payload, some ransomware, got loaded into their network. Over the course of a few weeks, they started escalating their privileges and turning off security features. And one evening, they encrypted the entire network. So all of their files were frozen, and then they were exfiltrated off of their network onto somewhere else. So fortunately, we were able to help them recover their database, even though their local backups weren't working quite the way they should. So they didn't lose any data, more than perhaps a couple of hours worth of data. But now that data is it's being monitored by the DoD and the FBI on the dark web to see if any of that data has been released for sale. They chose not to pay the ransomware, but we point this out just because the ramifications are severe. They are out there. Something like this can devastate a business. So it's definitely something to take seriously. So essentially, the requirements for CMMC are broken down into 17 different domains. They range from physical security measures to digital security measures. So it really is truly a company-wide endeavor. And all the requirements through those 17 standards are built into these 5 levels, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The timeline for this is has been slipping. It's a little bit unknown. Originally, it was supposed to be that in June 2020, that requests for proposals or RFPs would start having some of this verbiage in there. Anyway, so they're expecting that as many as 1,500 companies will be affected by the first round of implementation in the fall of 2021. So that's coming up relatively quick. So just here's a document that the CMMC accreditation body released, showing that that by winter and spring of 2021, they're expecting to be going live. And this, of course, is so the process for a company seeking certification is that first they would start to learn about it and start doing some assessments. They would then identify gaps in their process. They would remediate those gaps and prepare and request for an audit, and then hopefully pass that audit and continue to be able to bid on contracts. The assessment process will look more or less like this. You will, they are preparing right now, and I don't believe there are any officially released yet, but the C3PAO, it's a wonderful acronym, from the CMMC AB marketplace, will be a group of auditors that are certified to come audit you, just like an AS9100 auditor, quite honestly. Once assessed, a company will have 90 days to remediate any findings, and then they can submit those results to the auditor and hopefully get their certification. And it is definitely a process that will take some time. So even if your company is not expecting to be having any contracts that require this for another year or two, it is definitely advisable that you start working on this now. And I alluded to similar to AS9100. From what we've learned and from other folks we've talked to, this is much more intensive than AS9100. It's like AS9100 on steroids 10 times. So it is definitely something that is going to be fairly intrusive, fairly expensive, unfortunately, and just really affect all parts of the business. So let's talk about the levels for a minute here. So there are essentially 5 levels of cybersecurity maturity practices. The basic level is level 1. That's called basic cyber hygiene. Most of the companies that we would typically work with, the small to medium-sized machine shops or fab shops or companies that are making component parts or maybe small subassemblies, more or less we've heard that level 3 is the level that those companies will be required to be certified to. Those will be dictated on the contracts and RFPs that come out in the future. And then level 5 is for people, companies like the Raytheons, the Lockheeds that are making, really full-end, weapons and things of that sort. Everyone wants to know about costs. And there's definitely some unknowns here, and it will vary considerably depending on where a company is starting from. So essentially, it's going to be based on the level that's needed. And we've only put some rough estimates here that we've read from level 1 and level 3. And it really depends on where you're starting. If a company already has a pretty mature NIST 800-171 and DFARS practice, if they are compliant to those, then the costs range from $3,000 to $6,000 for level 1 or $15,000 on the low end. And if you really don't have much in the way of sort of cyber maturity, it could be upwards of $100,000. There are when we share these links, there will be a link to this page or to this document. Believe me or not, page 61,514 is where you can find some of the cost breakdowns of these standards. It's hilarious to me. CM certifications will be good for 3 years, and I have heard I have heard some things lately, and I was just talking to someone yesterday that the DoD are looking at doing reimbursements for the certification costs, not the preparation costs, but let's say it costs you, 10 grand for the actual auditor to come out and audit you. They are looking at potentially offering a one-time certification only cost reimbursement potentially. So so that's at least something. So let's talk about a little bit how we can help and what we're doing about this. And I'm going to start with a pretty big disclaimer. ProShop itself has not been audited by any CMC auditors. They don't exist yet. And myself and our staff are not certified or licensed to give any official advice or be prescriptive about what you should be doing about CMMC. And the CMMC Flying Start package, which I'll talk about a little bit later, is definitely just in beta mode and is limited in scope to just sort of some of the digital things that are related to kind of the ERP system. But anyway, with that aside, let's go ahead and get into it. So we've been working for many months now, almost a full year, on putting a lot of new features into ProShop to help our clients sort of check those boxes for the things that they need as that relates to ProShop. So starting with passwords. Passwords are immensely important. People use terribly insecure passwords all the time, and it's a huge weakness in a lot of organizations. So ProShop will now not allow the most 100,000 most commonly used passwords. Your company can have lots of control over what password configurations are. We have even certain password schemes that can be used, including the CMMC or custom schemes. So there's a lot in there for that. As I continue talking about some of these features, I'm going to make reference to these letters and numbers here. So these are referring back to the CMMC standard. So for example, this IA2078, that stands for the Identification and Authentication section, level 2, and requirement number 78. So when you think about, when you think about levels 1, 2, and 3 for a typical, say, machine shop, some of these are at level 2, some are at level 1, and some perhaps maybe at level 3. So we've put in a lot of work for, again, enhancing minimum security password requirements, prohibiting the reuse of passwords, which are important. This section, level 2 again as well, allows for temporary passwords to be issued by administrators and then immediately require new passwords to be set, along with all the guidelines and complexity rules that you can control yourself. These sections also level 2 again, only store and transmit cryptographically protected passwords, if I got that right, and obscuring identification information during the transit of that information back and forth. So we're not storing any passwords in the database, and everything should be fairly buttoned up that way. So here's one which is a level 3 requirement, also in the identification authentication section, but multi-factor authentication. And right now we are using YubiKeys. So they are a small key. I even have one right here. So a small little device that requires you to press a code. It's issued to an individual person, and that code has to be pressed at the moment you're trying to log in, and pretty darn secure. And we have a few customers that are already now using this for the last few months here. Works quite well. Limit unsuccessful login attempts is an important one. So that is also a user configurable option. Again, this is for level 2 under the access control section. That's what AC stands for. So user accounts can be automatically disabled after X number of unsuccessful login attempts, which you guys could control. And all active sessions for users can be disabled automatically as well. Preventing the use of shared identifiers. So basically ProShop requires a individual user login for every employee for many different reasons, and we have for a long time. And this is also a level 3 requirement, but we do not allow user IDs to be reused in the future. So if you had an employee with a certain employee ID number and that employee left and you deactivated their account, no employee in the future could reuse that same user ID code, which also helps for auditability of past past activities. Auditing is a very important part of the new CMMC standard. There is a fairly new module that we've created called the audit log module, and that allows basically complete ability to audit any behavior, any changes, any edits that anyone has made in the past in a pretty searchable way. So providing privacy and security notices consistent with applicable CUI rules. This again is also a level 2 requirement. So you can set a security notice in the config settings of your ProShop system. So your users have to agree to that every time that they log in, and letting them know that their activities are being monitored. And then another section here, level 2 again, in the access control section, used non-privileged accounts for roles when accessing non-security functions. So ProShop has a series of different types of user accounts with different permission levels that are sort of maximum levels. You can further limit any individual's ability to access or edit different modules or features. And so you can have sort of this idea of least privilege, where someone can log in, an administrator could log in with a lower level access so that they can't actually access non-security functions at the time that they're just doing their normal daily job. So another one here is, this is also again level 3, prevent non-privileged users from executing privileged functions and capture the execution of those functions in audit logs. So as I mentioned earlier, with different permissions, if you have a permission turned off, then you will get a notice if someone tries to go view something that they don't have access to read that. And the same would hold true for delete access for many types of records. Very few people would be able to delete certain types of records. Automatically terminate user sessions after a defined condition. This is also a level 3 requirement. So ProShop now has customizable session timeouts and customizable unsuccessful login attempt limits, and you can set those right in the config settings. And that's an easy one. All right, just checking my time here. We're actually making pretty good headway. So some of the other features here, this is a level 2. This is under the audit and accountability section, level 2. Ensure that the actions of individual system users can be uniquely traced to those users so they can be held accountable for their actions. So again, we have built this new sort of edit log option, and this allows ProShop to actively monitor and record unsuccessful login attempts and their sort of movement through the system, recording IP addresses and page requests. All right. So this also under the audit and accountability section, create and retain system audit logs and records to the extent needed to enable the monitoring, analysis, investigation, reporting of unlawful and authorized system activity. So through both a combination of the ProShop core application and through so let me kind of step back for a minute here. So ProShop is, generally speaking, a cloud-based delivered system. Most of our clients use ProShop on our AWS cloud system. But those that are either for ITAR or in the future for CMMC can either do AWS GovCloud, which is the GovCloud is FedRAMP certified. They have yet to release all their information about CMMC specifically. But we also have clients that do a fully on-prem installation and even behind an air gap for those that really don't want to have their system accessible at all from the internet. So ProShop does keep a log of all proxy requests based on IP and can log those and record those for future analysis. All right, so this is also into the audit and accountability section, level 2. So provide a system capability that compares and synchronizes internal system clocks with an authorized source to generate timestamps for auditing. So we've had this for forever, basically. Whenever someone checks off a box in ProShop or fills in a quantity or does something of that sort, ProShop keeps a time and date stamp of end user stamp. So if we mouse over a field, for example, it will pop up a little pop-up just like this saying which user edited that last and the exact time and date that they did that. And of course, now we have the audit log as well that you could go back on the back end and look and see, yeah, this is exactly what they changed and what they changed it from and what they changed it to. So that's a feature we've had more or less for a long, long time. And it's not only really useful, of course, for CMMC, but this is just generally useful for any company trying to run their business and understand what employees are doing what. So if I want to see, well, who signed off the final inspection of this operation? Well, Brian did that, on February 25th at 12:30 p.m. All right, protect audit information and audit logging tools from unauthorized access, modification, and deletion. This is also a level 3, so section 49 in the audit and accountability section. So one of the things that we've done in the last year, we've actually switched our indexing engine, which is what kind of controls our searching functions and our indexing of the database, into this really neat tool called Elasticsearch. And it's going to allow us to do a whole bunch of really neat things. And that information is logged and protected behind Elastic security protocols, which are based on user authentication in ProShop. So essentially, whatever you're trying to do in ProShop, even if it's going to use Elasticsearch for that indexing, will be based on the permissions that you have based on your user profile that have been set up by your administrators. All right, limit management of audit logging function to a subset of privileged users. This is also a level 3 requirement in the audit accountability section. And this, you can see, actually, here's an example of a user permission page. And they're right here down in the little orange and the red box there is the audit log. So we can turn on read and write access. And in fact, I don't even think delete access isn't even an option, even for administrative users. We tested that just the other day. So, but only certain users should be able to have access to even see the audit log, of course. So that's something that can be turned on. Of course, identify system users, processes acting on behalf of users and devices. This is fairly rudimentary, although, well, I'd say it is for us, maybe not for all. Essentially, this is saying that you will not be able to have any kind of shared accounts. So in ProShop, every user has to have their own unique account. And again, we've done that for years and years for many other reasons. One, because of the type of data that we collect, especially in terms of, because ProShop is a paperless system and every touch point that is happening with the ERP is happening through a digital interface rather than a piece of paper and then scanned in later. We want to make sure that we know which employees are performing which actions, what they have permission to do, what kind of performance metrics they are performing. So are they, hitting their time targets? Are they spending too much time, in troubleshooting? Are they creating non-conformance reports? All those types of things. If we go to look back at an inspection result from a work order, who signed off the first article, who inspected this exact, half-inch plus or minus 5 thou dimension, right? We have full records of who did that, and we always have. The other main reason why we have individual user accounts is because ProShop also has a complete QMS built into it. So all of the documentation for the ISO or AS9100 certification will all be stored in ProShop. So we need to be able to see which employees hold what training, in which training topics, and have permission to perform certain tasks, because those records are required, of course, when you have an auditor come to say, all right, show me that this employee knows how to do their job, what training they have, and then they can do it. To a satisfactory level. The other thing that allows us to do, which is a pretty neat function we've had for a lot of years now, is what we have called training access control. So that to basically lock out any attribute that an employee cannot perform unless they actually are trained to a certain level and proficiency in a training topic that's been specified for that attribute. So for example, if I didn't have enough training in doing inspections, then we could limit my ability to check the box that the first article inspection report had been completed. And if I tried to mouse over that field, it would pop up a little warning and a notice that this field is locked for training access control. And it would even provide me a hyperlink directly to the training document that that's locked out for that. So, and our training system is sort of a 1 through 4 level. So 1 is basic understanding of that feature or that training topic, and 4 is an advanced user, can help train others probably even. So you can set anywhere from a 1 through a 4. And anyway, that's a little bit of a digression, but that's just one reason that this is a relatively easy feature for us to handle. Employee replay resistant authentication mechanisms for network access to privileged and non-privileged accounts. That's a mouthful. This is also a level 3 requirement in the identification and authentication section. And this is again where we're using our YubiKey multi-factor authentication. So tokens for session management are generated via cryptographically secure random number generators and cannot be reused. So pretty secure system. It's been, these types of YubiKey things or physical hardware keys have been used for a long time in a lot of other places. Okay, well, that's a little bit about some of the features that we've been building over the last few years. Now let's talk about what we are trying to do to help our customers go through this and understand the process of going through CMMC certification. And I will mention again, this is still definitely in beta mode. We basically have rolled this out. We first started with about 3 of our clients, just sort of preparing and building this. After that went well, we've just released it to about 10 more who are now just starting the process of working through this. So let's get into that. All right, so we in ProShop, and I will also go back again about, excuse me. Oh, I see there's some questions coming here. So Brian will hopefully will it be an easy button? Yes, absolutely. We're working on the easy button. That's hilarious. Thank you, Brian or Bradley. I mentioned sort of the QMS modules in ProShop. So for a long time now, we have offered what we call our QMS Flying Start package. And we have different variants of that QMS Flying Start package. We have an aerospace version that's based on the AS9100 standard, and we have a medical version that's based on the ISO 13485 standard. And basically what the Flying Start, the QMS Flying Start is it's a series of documents and records that are built into ProShop that start with the standard itself and go into quality procedures and quality manual and tasks and training, and even our company positions module that outlines all the training requirements that relay back to the different training and tasks and procedures and ultimately back to the standard. So it's kind of a templated system that is built around the way ProShop works. So clients can much more quickly and easily go and get certified, or if they already were certified when they adopted ProShop, they can kind of merge their current QMS documentation a bit more easily into what we provide. So they can then kind of move their QMS into ProShop. And we've had clients, many clients do this relatively quickly. In fact, I was just reading one of our larger clients, Roush Yates in North Carolina. They have about, I think, 80 or 90 employees there in the machine shop. And they bought our Flying Start package. and they merged their existing, and they started in January of last year and of 2020. And by March, they had their sort of recertification audit. So in just 2 months or 3 months, they fully merged it and passed their AS9100. So we took that same basic approach and decided to put this into sort of the QMS, or I'm sorry, the CMMC and cybersecurity. So this, our own little acronym for SIP is our standards implementation process. And so we've basically created a multi-level part number system, actually. So we use our part module to help manage the requirements. So if we see here on the screen, this is routing for level 1 CMMC, and it has several different operations, sort of starting with the most basic, introduction to CMMC and some of the resources that should be reviewed, into planning, documentation, users, asset inventory, network management, backups, level 1 certification, and then training. And so what this provides is a framework for a company to start understanding what they need to do to get level 1 certified, and then helpful links and documentation and some basic information. And we're not terribly prescriptive about this. We're really clear about this. It's up to every company to decide exactly how they want to meet those requirements. In some cases, and I'll show you here in a minute, we do have some very basic information about it. But let's go ahead and go through this. So again, we have levels 1 through 5 all in the system. We're only expecting to kind of go up to level 3 in a more comprehensive way, because we don't expect any of our clients at this point will be level 4 or 5. And if they do, they'll be doing that strictly on their own for the most part. So here's an example. Here is a section for physical access for authorized individuals. So it's level 1, requirement 131. And the requirements here are to limit physical access to the office site and document of physical access limitations. And so essentially, our clients will issue a work order, sort of a project management work order, if you will, for every individual requirement of the CMMC standard. And within those work orders, there will be the documentation they need to understand what the requirement is, with links out to either the government sites or other documents that might be useful to them, and then a basic framework for them to then record and create links and link into the system the records of what they're actually doing to meet that part of the standard. So for example, Operation 10 lists the activities associated with the requirements, while Operation 20 here lists the documentation of the requirements. And so these will actually be used for the auditing process. So when the CMMC auditor actually comes to do that audit, generally speaking, they will be using ProShop to perform that audit. They can go to the sections of the standard, which I think is the next slide here. Yep, so here if we go for an example. So this is level 1 requirement 131. And this has the actual requirements of the standard itself. This is what the standard says that the company needs to do. And you'll notice, and so we use this system, another acronym, sorry about that, of what we call RFLs, or requirement fulfillment locations. I always like to read this backwards. These are the locations of how we fulfill the requirements. So it's really quite easy to understand when an auditor says, all right, let's look at section 131, and you pull that section right up in ProShop. And in this case, there are 3 different links. There's 2 right up here, and there's 1 here down at the bottom. And these hyperlinks and ProShop, the Flying Start package will come with these already pre-configured. They can be edited if you want to add your own. But in this case, this links out to into a task in our security segment. And it also links into a new section of the quality manual where we document certain things that have been built into ProShop here. So basically, you can just follow those hyperlinks ultimately to the actual documentation of what you've actually done to meet these requirements, and make it very easy to audit. And we've gotten this same kind of feedback for a long, long time. that on the QMS side of things, auditors say that that ProShop is one of the most sort of audit-friendly systems they've ever seen. So we're hoping that holds true as we get into the CMMC stuff. We have a question: will the CMMC module be available without having to purchase Slang part package? All the features I mentioned earlier are all part of the standard ProShop package. You won't need to buy anything, but this Flying Start package and the content that you see here, like the CMMC in the standards module, that will be for purchase only. And I know Will is a customer of ours, and Will, we do have a webinar tomorrow for clients specifically where we'll get more into these details. So then we'll feed into tasks. So here's an example where we actually have been a little bit prescriptive, but only in a very rudimentary way about this is a task of having, escorting visitors and monitoring their activity. So in the task itself, under the security department section, under physical protections, we do have a little bit of basic information about what would be recommended to have a sign in and sign out sheet and ask about their status and keep logs and escort them at all times and make sure that you're monitoring their activities while they're in the building. The documents module will also provide some additional information. So here's one that just gives an overview of working with our CMMC SIP Flying Start package. And so there'll be things like this interspersed throughout the system. And then we will also, for our clients that are doing this, we have a client forum, and we've built a CMMC forum for clients to share and discuss and share links, and we'll certainly be chiming in there as well. And again, so these links will be provided. This slide deck will be provided, so there'll be links to our Flying Start package and other useful links for CMMC. So that ends the official formal section. I'd love to actually launch the poll now. And we'll get into some Q&A here in just a minute. I know some Q&A has already been going, but let me go ahead and launch this poll. I'll hold this up here for a few minutes, but if you would be willing and or interested in filling some of these out, I think there's only 4 questions, so it should be relatively easy. We'd appreciate that very much. If you'd like to learn more about ProShop in general, our website, our main website, I should say, is right here, ProShopERP.com, and our contact and email. And then if you are feeling extra adventurous, I would definitely encourage you to go check out LoveYourERP.com. It's just a fun, kind of silly little site that we released for Valentine's Day of this year, with lots of great testimonials and quotes of customers who said they love ProShop. It's a little bit silly, kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's kind of fun at the same time. So, all right, we see some questions coming in. Thank you, or the poll questions. And
we do have another question here about the ProShop server secure relative to CMMC standards. So that's going to depend on a few different factors, of course.
Yes.
Do you want to go ahead and adjust that?
Yeah, and Kelsey, chime in if you'd like to, if I get in
no
trouble here. But
if I get in trouble, I'll try and keep you out of trouble, Paul.
This really depends. I mean, certainly for clients that have decided to host on premise, that's going to be entirely up to them, right? And what their IT situation is there. For clients that are hosting on our AWS GovCloud service, that is still TBD, right? I mean, the GovCloud has been hosting government documents for a long, long time. Even the Department of Defense themselves, host many things on the GovCloud. But they have, as far as I know, Kelsey, they have sort of yet to release their sort of official kind of policies or statements on the CMMC standard. Is that true?
I mean, they've definitely released a number of documents that they, intend to meet the CMMC requirements, but of course, getting certified to that is kind of the trick, right? So I think a lot of people are looking at, what they think and what they have built that they believe will indeed meet the requirements, and nobody can say until it actually happens whether it has met it or not. So it's kind of like, people who for a long time said, "Oh, I'm ISO compliant," or "I'm AS 9100 compliant." It's like, the proof's in the pudding. Once you have a certificate, then you can say, yes, we are, CMMC, which is the certified part, right? But I think AWS has an enormously good track record of cyber maturity, and that their standard is very high. So, the anticipation is that they won't have any trouble meeting the certification requirement.
Yeah. There was a question that came in through the chat as well. If CMMC is FedRAMP certified. And no, at this point, ProShop, we are not set FedRAMP. Of course, AWS is FedRAMP certified. And so we are still determining whether that sort of inheritance matrix of certification is going to flow down to where we need it. If we do, we absolutely would pursue that. But so that is still yet to be determined.
Yeah, and FedRAMP just, like, it's an easy thing to say, but it's also got all of those different levels. So to say you're, FedRAMP certified is a little bit of like, where on the scale are you? Because there's a lot of different scale in there.
Yeah, and the question that came in was specifically the DFARS 7012 clause.
Okay. Yeah.
Which, yeah, I've just, that one a little bit better than I do, but so we've gone through that question a couple of times actually for some customers on that one. That's providing access, I think, to the
media side of
media.
Things.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely a lot in there, and I've talked with a number of different, people in the supply chain, including some of the people who we work with at AWS. And it appears as though AWS recently has sort of decided that they will, in the hopefully rare event that they actually have to bring the media, that they will probably end up supporting that kind of requirement in order to meet all these, right? It's hard for them. It's way in the back in some server farm, and there's a hard disk, and you're like, can we even can anyone actually even go over to that server? But anyway, I think they're going to probably meet the requirement one way or another.
Sure. There's a question here from Dan. What about pushing down this to subcontractors like platers and heat treaters? So from what we've learned, any company, whether they're the machine shop or the plating or heat treating company, if they are handling CUI, controlled unclassified information, which has some broad definitions, but they will need to be certified themselves. So a heat treater or a plating company will need to get CMMC level 3 more than likely, which is a big ask. We totally understand that, but that's them's the rules, as they say. So
I think your analogy from earlier in our conversation, Paul, is interesting, which is it's not really clear. Like in ITAR, there's maybe some very specific documents that are labeled like ITAR controlled, but in government contract as CUI data, it may not be as clearly labeled. It may just be sort of a blanket kind of statement for this contract or something like that. And sometimes it's sort of the innocuous thing that you wouldn't expect. Like, is a packing slip really CUI data? It's got some random part number and a quantity and a date. It's like, yeah, that's true. But in a metadata example, you may very well need to protect that information so that people don't know which parts are getting shipped where in some sort of, leak. So yeah, it's surprising what might end up falling under CUI data. I think it's going to be a bigger net than ITAR data for sure.
Oh yeah, much. Yeah, and someone asked me the other day, so what if we take the customer drawing that is the CUI and we redraw it and make it our own drawing and redact any information from who the client is? And I still believe that actual part, because it will have views and dimensions and specs on it, that would still be considered CUI. So redacting a drawing would not be sufficient to not have that sub-supplier need to also be certified. A few other questions here. Is ProShop planning on getting CMMC certified? Yes, absolutely we are. We are actively working on all of our internal processes and procedures. And in fact, we're going through our own CMMC flying start package internally, because we use ProShop to run our own software company, believe it or not. So yes, absolutely we will. Someone else, you mentioned this is in beta. Can we elaborate on the testing we've done? So as I said, we started, we sort of put the question out there to our client base, and we chose 3 clients that were interested in pursuing this with us and testing this out with us. So we had 3 clients who kind of went through this process of testing out all the stuff that we were creating and the framework for level 1. And they were using, in some cases, their own cybersecurity consultants, their own third-party consultants who were advising them on what they should actually be doing. But they were using our Flying Start package to document the process that they were going through, the actual things they were deciding, the measures they were putting in place, and recording those into the Flying Start package. So
yeah, I mean, to kind of give you an idea of part of this content, it should theoretically be possible to create the biggest spreadsheet you've ever seen, 2,000 rows long and 50 columns wide, and track your progress. Like, that's sort of theoretically possible. And if you were using something that documented every time someone added anything to anywhere, then, that could be. But what we've created is an architecture that leads into maintenance and has all of these elements that give, the right kinds of context to all of your work and flows it all correctly. And so, we don't test this as in like, does the Flying Start, pass some kind of audit? Each company is going to have to do that. But the process of doing it is something that we're trying to help clients with. So it's that process element, just like AS9100, nobody can take our Flying Start package and say, we didn't touch it and now we're planning to pass audit. It's like, no, you have to do the work for your company to fit what you're doing, and then you can use it to pass audit, right? So.
Yeah, thank you, Kels. So we have about 25 folks that have responded to the poll, about 45% of you. If you still haven't, please go ahead and do so. And we'll keep seeing if we have more questions here. And if we have gotten through all the questions, then we'll maybe give you a few minutes of your day back. So let's see if there's anyone here.
Yeah, I think I'd like to just put in a plug, which is, it's really the case that this is a journey, and Paul mentioned it before, but, for those of you who have been through the ISO or the AS QMS journey, it's definitely something where you kind of have to get going at some point, and it's not going to be a light switch. It's definitely a path. There's no reason to hang around and say, well, I'll wait till it's required or something. This is all stuff that's really good for you and your team, and you can do the low hanging fruit stuff early. Get some basic fundamental stuff in place. Just limit a few of the access possibles, right? Bad actors are looking for the easiest possible attack surface. And it's, depressing when you can do a, quick Google search for PHP hacks and just like find out you can hack 10 sites on your own through a web interface with no skills. It's like, okay, that's a pretty low bar. So we just want to start raising the bar, right? And making this something that gives it, the starting point. So get started wherever you are is the answer, with or without the ProShop Flying Start, get started. And if you realize you need some more help, that's what we're about.
Yeah, thanks, Kels. I think that's a really good point. I mean, this is definitely a lot of people are interested because they want to be bidding on government contracts. They want to be in that workspace. But this is so much more than that. This is about the health of your data, about making sure that you're secure and you can't get busted, you can't get broken into, and even held hostage like what we had seen before, right? So this is not just a practice in who can you bid work for. This is definitely a practice in making sure that you've got the security in place to keep your data safe.
Yep, absolutely. There's another question that just came in. There is a physical aspect to CMMC as well, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, there absolutely is.
I was going to say a lot of times they talk about this as like information security, right? This is even beyond, digital, like this one's called cyber, right? And it's like, yeah, that's our most important information channel right now. But all the cyber in the world doesn't help you if somebody comes in and takes your hard drive and then has everything, right? It's like it's not helpful if they have the physical media. So the physical component is huge. especially when you're talking about storage media, right? And how that all works. And, people talk about encryption at rest and, what is rest? And for those of you who want to get further down that path, there's lots to go there. But yeah, physical access is a huge deal.
And that's one of the benefits of using something like a CMMC compliant cloud service, is that they have much better physical access than you probably do in your own facility, right? Just another thing that you don't have to worry about. I'm going to close down the polling right here. So thank you all for, so these are encouraging news. So about 44% have already started working on the CMMC compliance. About 20% need to get started right away, and 20% will be started in later 2021, 22. The most plan to be ready, about 40% of companies are plan to be ready for audit in 2022, with almost 40% that plan to be ready later in 2021. And one company says they're already compliant and ready for that C3 PAO auditor anytime they're ready for them. So good on for them. With about 20% either planning to be 2023 or later, or not at all, because they just don't need it. And as far as ERP providers, the majority said they haven't looked into whether their ERP provider will be supporting them and helping them with those features. And about 32% said yes, that their ERP providers or software providers already have features in the works that are going to help them be compliant, which is great.
That's good to hear. Glad that's the case.
And 84% of you would like to know more about what we're doing. So thank you very much for that. All right. Well, unless there's any other questions. Sorry, there is one here. I apologize if you guys already went over this, but is there a way to view full history of what was done to a work order, as into what changes were made just for auditing purposes?
Oh, yeah. So I think
Absolutely.
I'll take that one. Yeah. I mean, it depends a little bit on your version of ProShop, exactly how extensive the edit log items are. And it also depends on what you've enabled for your edit log stuff. But certainly you can enable edit log for work orders, for example, and that would give you every single edit that was ever made to every work order by field attribute and by person, time, date stamp. So you get a clear understanding of what it was, what it got changed to, how the transaction was made, either through something automated like create work orders from the customer PO would automatically assign that user to all of those work order creations and all of those attributes that were added. So the short answer to that is yes, and you need to make sure that you've configured that the way you intended. And it would be good if you were on version 5.15.
ProShop, yes, of course. All right, I think that's, unless there's any other last second questions here, we're gonna give you 3 whole minutes of your day back. So thank you all very much for joining us today. We hope that was useful. We're still learning, you're still learning. This is a journey we're going through together, but it's great that you invested the time to learn some more today. And please reach out if we can be of more assistance. And thank you all so much for your time today. And thank you, Kelsey and Brian.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah.
Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.